Amber's hands trembled as she clutched the small box containing her few belongings. The marble floor of the Valentino mansion felt cold beneath her worn sneakers, and every eye in the grand foyer was fixed on her. Mrs. Castellano, the head housekeeper, stood with her arms crossed, lips pursed in satisfaction as security guards flanked Amber on both sides. "I told Mr. Valentino you weren't suitable for this position, Mrs. Castellano announced loudly, ensuring every staff member within earshot could hear. "Coming here from that neighborhood, thinking you could just waltz into a respectable home." Amber bit her lip, refusing to let the tears fall. She'd worked so hard to get this job, to prove herself worthy despite the whispers and sidelong glances. 6 months of loving Lily and Noah like they were her own, of sleepless nights when they had nightmares, of gentle songs and patient care. 6 months erased in a single morning because Mrs. Castellano had decided she didn't belong. Then, cutting through the humiliating silence, came the sound that shattered everything, the desperate, heart-wrenching wails of 2 3-year-olds who had just realized their Amber was leaving. And somewhere in the mansion, Marco Valentino heard his children crying in a way they hadn't cried since their mother died. What Mrs. Castellano didn't know was that firing Amber Martinez would be the biggest mistake anyone had ever made in the Valentino household. If you want to discover how this story began and what happened after this devastating moment, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one. Now let's go back to where it all started. 6 months earlier, when a struggling young woman from the Bronx walked through those mansion doors for the very first time. 6 months earlier, Amber Martinez stood outside the towering iron gates of the Valentino estate in Long Island, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The mansion beyond looked like something from a movie. White columns, manicured hedges, and more windows than she could count. Her entire apartment building could probably fit in the garage. She smoothed down her only professional dress, a simple navy blue one she'd bought from a thrift store, and pressed the intercom button with a shaking finger. "Name and purpose," a gruff voice demanded. "Amber Martinez, I'm here for the Nanny interview." A long pause followed. She could almost feel the judgment through the speaker. Finally, the gate swung open with a mechanical hum that sounded like money. Smooth, effortless, intimidating. The walk up the driveway felt endless. Amber clutched her folder of references and certifications like a lifeline. She'd worked 3 jobs to get through her early childhood education program while taking care of her grandmother. She was qualified. She was good at this. She just needed someone to give her a chance. A stern-faced woman in a crisp black dress met her at the door. "Mrs. Castellano, head housekeeper." She introduced herself without offering a handshake. Her eyes swept over Amber with barely concealed disapproval, lingering on her worn shoes and the way her natural curls refused to be completely tamed. "Follow me. Mr. Valentino is a very busy man. Don't waste his time." The inside of the mansion was even more overwhelming than the outside. Crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than Amber would earn in a lifetime, and marble everywhere. Her footsteps echoed despite her attempt to walk quietly. They passed several staff members, all of whom stopped to stare at Amber with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. She heard the whispers, saw the way they looked at each other. She'd seen those looks before growing up in the Bronx, applying for jobs in Manhattan, the look that said she didn't belong in their world. Mrs. Castellano led her to a study lined with leather-bound books and antique furniture. "Wait here. Touch nothing." Left alone, Amber tried to calm her racing heart. She needed this job desperately. Her grandmother's medical bills were piling up, and the 2 part-time positions she juggled barely covered rent. When she'd seen the listing for a live-in nanny position with competitive pay, it had felt like providence. The door opened with startling suddenness. Marco Valentino entered like a force of nature, 6'3" of controlled power, in an immaculate charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. Dark hair perfectly styled, sharp jawline shadowed with calculated stubble, and eyes so intensely dark they seemed to see straight through her. The small scar above his left eyebrow and the hint of a tattoo at his collar only added to his dangerous magnetism. Behind him came 2 small tornadoes, a boy and a girl with dark curls and eyes that mirrored their father's, both talking excitedly in Italian. "Papa, she's pretty," the little girl exclaimed, switching to English as she noticed Amber. Lily, Noah, manners, Marco said, his voice a deep rumble that sent shivers down Amber's spine. His eyes fixed on her, assessing, calculating. Miss Martinez. Mr. Valentino. Amber stood, refusing to let his intimidating presence make her shrink. Thank you for seeing me. He gestured for her to sit, taking the chair behind the massive desk while the twins climbed onto a nearby sofa, watching Amber with unabashed curiosity. Your resume is impressive given your circumstances, Marco said, the word circumstances carrying weight. 3 jobs while completing your degree, taking care of a sick relative, foster care placements before that. You've had a difficult life. It wasn't a question, and Amber felt her spine straighten. I've had a real life, Mr. Valentino, one that taught me patience, resilience, and how to care for people when resources are limited. Those twins of yours don't need someone who's perfect. They need someone who understands that love matters more than anything else. The room fell silent. Mrs. Castellano, who had appeared in the doorway, made a small sound of disapproval. Amber's heart sank. She'd been too bold, too honest. She'd blown her chance. But Marco Valentino's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering in those dark eyes. Tell me, Miss Martinez, what do you know about my family? I know you lost your wife 2 years ago, Amber said softly, glancing at the twins who had quieted. I know Lily and Noah have been through something no child should experience. I know you're looking for someone who can provide stability and genuine care, not just supervision. And I know that despite what Mrs. Castellano thinks, I'm exactly the person you need. Papa, Lily piped up, climbing down from the sofa and walking directly to Amber. She studied her with serious eyes that were far too old for a 3-year-old. Do you know Italian? No, sweetheart, I don't, Amber admitted, but I'd love to learn if you'd teach me. Lily broke into a smile. Noah, emboldened by his sister's approval, joined them. Do you read stories? With funny voices? I do the best funny voices in all of New York, Amber promised, her heart expanding as Noah giggled. Marco watched this interaction with an intensity that made Amber's skin prickle. When he spoke again, his voice had softened almost imperceptibly. The position is live-in. Your quarters would be on the same floor as the nursery. You'd have 2 days off per month. The pay is $60,000 annually plus room and board. Amber's breath caught. That was more money than she'd ever imagined earning. It was freedom. From the 3 jobs, from the constant stress, from the fear of losing her grandmother's apartment. There are rules, Marco continued, standing and walking around the desk. He moved like a predator, all controlled grace and latent power. My children's safety is paramount. You go nowhere without my security team's knowledge. You speak to no one about our family or our business. You maintain absolute discretion. And most importantly, he stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. You never lie to me. About anything. Can you follow those rules, Miss Martinez? Amber met his gaze without flinching, even though her heart was hammering. I can follow those rules, Mr. Valentino. Can you follow mine? His eyebrow arched. Yours? Lily and Noah are children, not possessions. They need love, patience, and room to make mistakes. That means sometimes they'll get dirty, sometimes they'll be loud, and sometimes they'll cry. If you can't handle me prioritizing their emotional well-being over maintaining a perfect, silent household, then I'm not the right person for this job. Mrs. Castellano gasped audibly. Several staff members who had gathered in the hallway looked shocked. Nobody spoke to Marco Valentino like that, but Marco's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, but held a glimmer of amusement. You start Monday, Miss Martinez. Mrs. Castellano will show you to your quarters. As Amber gathered her things with shaking hands, trying to process what had just happened, she caught Lily and Noah beaming at her. Marco returned to his desk, but she felt his gaze following her as Mrs. Castellano, clearly furious, led her from the room. What Amber didn't know was that Marco Valentino had just made a decision that would change everything, and that Mrs. Castellano had just gained an enemy she would do anything to destroy. Amber moved into the Valentino mansion on a crisp Monday morning in October, her entire life fitting into 2 suitcases and a duffel bag. Her new quarters were larger than her old apartment, a spacious bedroom with an attached bathroom, a small sitting area, and windows that overlooked the estate's gardens. It was more luxury than she'd ever experienced, yet somehow it felt lonely. The first week was a careful dance of learning routines and boundaries. Lily and Noah attached themselves to her immediately, following her everywhere and constantly seeking her attention. They showed her their playroom, their favorite hiding spots, and the garden where they fed the koi fish their mother had loved. Marco remained a distant presence, leaving before dawn, returning after the children were asleep, always surrounded by stern-faced men in dark suits who watched everything with calculating eyes. When he was home, the entire household seemed to hold its breath. But Amber noticed things, the way his jaw tightened when he heard Lily crying, the way he paused outside the nursery door when Amber sang lullabies in Spanish, the way his eyes lingered on her during the rare moments their paths crossed, a mixture of curiosity and something darker she couldn't quite name. Mrs. Castellano made her disapproval crystal clear. She criticized everything: Amber's clothing, her hairstyles, the way she let the children play outside even when it was muddy. The other staff members followed her lead, freezing Amber out of conversations and making her feel like an intruder in the home where she now lived. "They're jealous," said Maria, the young maid who sometimes defied Mrs. Castellano to speak with Amber. "The twins actually smile now. They laugh. Before you came, this house was like a tomb." On her 10th night, everything changed. Amber woke to screaming, Lily's terrified shrieks echoing through the hallway. She ran barefoot to the nursery in her modest pajamas, not caring about appearances. Lily was thrashing in her bed, caught in a nightmare, while Noah cried in sympathy from his own bed. "Shh, baby, it's okay," Amber soothed, gathering Lily into her arms. "Amber's here, you're safe." "Mama," Lily sobbed against her chest. "I dreamed Mama was calling me, but I couldn't find her." Amber's heart shattered. She held the little girl close, rocking gently while humming a soft melody. Noah climbed out of bed and joined them, and soon she had both twins wrapped in her embrace. She didn't notice Marco standing in the doorway until he spoke. "They have nightmares often." Amber's head snapped up. Marco stood there in dark pants and an unbuttoned white shirt, looking disheveled and exhausted in a way she'd never seen. His hair was mussed, his feet bare, and there was something raw in his expression. "Mr. Valentino, I didn't hear you." "Keep doing what you're doing," he interrupted quietly, leaning against the doorframe. "You're good with them." Amber continued rocking, acutely aware of his gaze on her. Lily's sobs gradually quieted, her breathing evening out. Noah's thumb found its way to his mouth, a habit Amber was gently trying to break during the day but allowed at night. "They miss her," Amber said softly. "That's healthy. It means they loved her. I don't want them to hurt." Marco's voice was rough with an emotion Amber hadn't expected from the cold, controlled man she'd met 2 weeks ago. "Pain is part of love, Mr. Valentino. We can't protect them from all of it. We can only make sure they know they're not alone in it." Marco moved into the room, his presence filling the space. He sat on the edge of Noah's bed, studying Amber with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You speak from experience." It wasn't a question, but Amber found herself answering anyway. "I lost my mother when I was 8. Foster care after that. I remember the nightmares, the feeling that the world would never be safe again. But I also remember the foster mother who held me through them, who never made me feel like my grief was an inconvenience." "And your father?" "Never knew him." Amber adjusted her hold on Lily, who was now sleeping again. "Just like these two will eventually not remember every detail of their mother, but they'll remember the feeling of being loved. That's what we have to give them." "We?" Marco repeated the word, as if testing its weight. He reached out and brushed a curl from Noah's forehead with surprising gentleness. "Mrs. Castellano submitted a complaint about you today. She says you're too informal with the children, that you let them run wild, that you don't maintain proper boundaries." Amber's stomach dropped. "Mr. Valentino, I told her the children seem happier than they've been in 2 years, and that if she had concerns about their care, she should bring them to me directly, instead of gossiping with the other staff." Marco's eyes met hers. "I don't tolerate disloyalty in my household, Miss Martinez. From anyone." The implied protection in his words sent a shiver through Amber. This was the man whispered about in fearful tones, the one whose name made hardened criminals nervous. Yet here he sat in his children's nursery, tired and vulnerable, trusting her with what clearly mattered most to him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing." He stood, and Amber carefully transferred the sleeping Lily back to her bed. "I'll be traveling to Chicago for 3 days. There's a situation that requires my attention. The children will be safe," Amber promised. Marco paused at the door, his hand on the frame. "I know. That's why you're here. Then, softer, almost too quiet to hear, make sure you're safe too. He disappeared into the hallway before Amber could respond, leaving her heart racing and her mind spinning. There had been something in his voice, something that sounded almost like worry, not for his children, but for her. The next morning she woke to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a new phone, far more expensive than anything she could afford, with a single number programmed into it. A note in bold handwriting read, "If anything happens while I'm gone, anything, MSS, MV." Amber stared at the phone, understanding the weight of what he'd given her. Direct access to Marco Valentino. The kind of access people would kill for. She programmed in her grandmother's number and tucked the phone into her pocket, trying to ignore the way her hands trembled slightly. Mrs. Castellano noticed the phone at breakfast. Getting gifts from Mr. Valentino already? How interesting. It's for emergencies with the children, Amber replied evenly. Of course it is. Mrs. Castellano's smile was cold. Do remember your place, Miss Martinez. You're an employee here, nothing more. Girls like you who forget that tend to find themselves very sorry. Amber met her gaze without flinching. I know exactly what my place is, Mrs. Castellano. Right now, it's with Lily and Noah, making sure they have the best possible day. If you'll excuse me. She walked away with her head high, aware of the housekeeper's furious stare burning into her back. What Amber didn't see was Mrs. Castellano pulling out her own phone, typing a quick message to someone whose name wasn't saved in her contacts. 3 days later, Marco returned from Chicago with shadows under his eyes and blood on his shirt collar that he'd tried to hide beneath his jacket. Amber saw it when he stopped by the nursery where she was reading to the twins, saw it and said nothing, but their eyes met in a moment of silent understanding. He was dangerous, his world was violent, and somehow, despite everything, she was beginning to trust him. That should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first real safety she'd known in years. Absolutely not, Marco said flatly, not even looking up from the documents on his desk. Amber stood in the doorway of his study, Lily's hand in hers, refusing to back down. She was invited to the children's charity gala. Her name is on the invitation. She's been talking about it for 2 weeks. It's not safe. Life isn't safe, Mr. Valentino. But Lily needs to feel normal sometimes. She needs to be around other children her age. Papa, please, Lily added, her voice small but determined. I want to wear my pretty dress, the blue one like Mama used to wear. Marco's jaw tightened at the mention of his late wife. He finally looked up, his gaze moving from his daughter's hopeful face to Amber's determined one. And you think you can keep her safe at an event with 300 people? I think that between me, your security team, and the fact that it's being held at the Rothman estate with more security than Fort Knox, Lily will be perfectly fine. Amber stepped fully into the study, drawing herself up to her full height. But more than that, I think she deserves the chance to be a 4-year-old who gets to dance and eat cookies and feel special, don't you? The silence stretched between them, charged with tension. Marco's fingers drummed once on the desk. A tell Amber had learned meant he was considering something he didn't want to concede. You'll stay within sight of my men at all times, he finally said. And I'll be attending as well. Amber blinked in surprise. You're coming to a children's charity event? I'm a major donor. My presence was expected anyway. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. But now I have an additional reason to attend. 3 days later, Amber found herself in front of the mirror in her quarters, trying not to feel completely inadequate. The other nannies would arrive in designer gowns. She had one dress that might possibly work, a simple emerald green one she'd worn to her college graduation, now slightly out of style, but still elegant enough. A knock at her door interrupted her anxiety spiral. Special delivery, Maria announced, wheeling in a garment bag and a large box. From Mr. Valentino. Amber's eyes widened. There must be some mistake. No mistake, he said, and I quote, Miss Martinez will need something appropriate for the event. Maria grinned. Girl, you better look in that bag. With shaking hands, Amber unzipped the garment bag. Inside was a gown that took her breath away. Deep sapphire blue that would complement her skin tone perfectly, with elegant lines that were sophisticated without being revealing. In the box were matching shoes, simple jewelry, and a note in Marco's distinctive handwriting. You represent my household tonight. Dress accordingly. MV. It was practical, professional, and absolutely nothing personal about it. So why did Amber's heart race as she slipped into the dress that fit her perfectly, as if made specifically for her measurements? Mrs. Castellano's expression when Amber descended the stairs was worth every second of discomfort. The housekeeper's face went from smug superiority to shocked outrage in the span of a heartbeat. "Well," she said acidly, "aren't you just full of surprises?" Lily gasped with delight. "Amber, you look like a princess." "Not quite, sweetheart, but thank you." Amber smoothed down the dress, trying to ignore how exposed she felt. "Bellissima." The word was spoken so softly, Amber almost didn't hear it. She turned to find Marco at the top of the stairs, and her breath simply stopped. He was devastating in a black tuxedo that emphasized his powerful build. His hair styled back, the dangerous edge to him somehow both softened and intensified by the formal wear. But it was the way he was looking at her, with an expression that was no longer cold or calculating but something heated and almost vulnerable, that made her knees weak. He descended the stairs without taking his eyes off her. "The dress fits well." "It's perfect, thank you. You didn't have to." "I did." He was close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "You're with my daughter. People will judge her based on your appearance." It's practical. It was a reasonable explanation, a professional one, so why did it feel like there was more he wasn't saying? The drive to the Rothman estate was tense with anticipation. Lily chattered excitedly in Italian, and Amber caught Marco watching them in the rearview mirror more than once, something unreadable in his expression. The gala was overwhelming, a sea of wealth and power that made even Marco's mansion seem modest. Women dripping in diamonds, men conducting business deals between champagne toasts, and children surprisingly well-behaved despite the late hour. Amber stuck close to Lily, hyper-aware of the security guards positioned at every corner, and Marco's presence never far away. Other nannies eyed her with curiosity and some with barely concealed envy. She heard the whispers, "That's the Valentino nanny. Did you see the way he looks at her? She must be something special." "Ignore them," Marco murmured, appearing at her elbow with 2 champagne flutes. He handed her one, his fingers brushing hers. "They're bored people looking for gossip." "They're not wrong to wonder," Amber said quietly. "This dress probably costs more than I made in 6 months at my old jobs. People notice things like that." "Let them notice." Marco's jaw tightened. "You earned that dress by making my children happy, by caring for them like they matter. That's worth more than money." Before Amber could respond, a woman's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Marco Valentino, I heard you actually left your fortress for this little party." Amber turned to see a striking woman in a red gown that left little to the imagination, her eyes cold despite her smile. The tension in Marco's shoulders told Amber this was not a friendly encounter. "Victoria." Marco's voice was flat. "I didn't realize you'd be here. Daddy makes sure I'm invited to everything." Victoria's eyes slid to Amber with thinly veiled contempt. "And who is this? Another one of your staff?" "Miss Martinez is my children's nanny," Marco said, his hand suddenly settling on the small of Amber's back, possessive and protective. "And she's under my protection, remember that." The warning in his voice was unmistakable. Victoria's smile turned brittle. "Of course. How sweet that you've become so attached to the help. I'm sure that won't cause any problems at all." She glided away, leaving Amber's heart pounding. "Who was that?" "Antonio Ricci's daughter. He controls the docks. We have an uncomfortable business relationship." Marco's hand was still on her back, and she didn't think he'd realized it. "She's also been trying to position herself as a potential wife for 2 years. "Oh." Amber wasn't sure why that information made her stomach twist. "Should I be worried?" "Not about her." Marco's thumb moved in a small circle against her back, sending shivers through her. "But I need you to be careful. This world, my world, it's not kind to people who get too close to me." "Your children got close to you," Amber pointed out. "Should they be careful too? That's different." "Why? Because they're blood?" Amber turned to face him fully, aware they were attracting stares. "Mr. Valentino, I've been taking care of Lily and Noah for 3 months. I've seen you come home with blood on your clothes. I've heard the whispered conversations. I'm not naive about who you are or what you do. But those children in there?" She gestured toward the ballroom, where Lily was dancing with other children. "They need you to be their father first and a criminal second. And maybe I need you to trust that I can handle more than you think." Marco stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You should be afraid of me. Maybe. But I'm not. And God help her, it was true. The moment stretched between them, charged with something dangerous and electric. Then chaos erupted. Gunshots, distant but unmistakable, echoed from somewhere in the estate. Immediately, Marco's entire demeanor changed. The man who'd been looking at her with conflicted longing vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating boss who'd earned his reputation. "Get Lily, now! Don't stop for anything." He was already moving, his security team materializing around him. "Take her to the panic room, third door on the left from the main entrance." Amber didn't hesitate. She ran toward the ballroom, her heels clicking frantically on marble. She found Lily surrounded by other children, confused by the sudden exodus of panicked adults. "Amber!" Lily reached for her, and Amber scooped her up without slowing down. "We're going to play a game, baby. A quiet game, where we see how fast we can run. Can you do that?" Lily nodded, burying her face in Amber's neck as they moved. Amber's heart was hammering, her dress restricting her movement. But she didn't stop. She could hear shouting behind them, more shots, chaos spreading like wildfire. The panic room door was reinforced steel disguised as wood. Amber punched in the code Marco had made her memorize her first week, just in case, and stumbled inside with Lily. The room was small, lined with supplies, monitors showing different parts of the estate. On one screen she could see Marco moving with lethal precision, taking down armed men with an efficiency that should have terrified her. On another, security guards protecting fleeing guests. And on a third, Amber's blood ran cold. Mrs. Castellano, standing in a corner having an animated conversation on her phone, pointing toward the panic room location. "Oh my God," Amber whispered. "She told them where we are." Lily whimpered and Amber forced herself to think. The phone Marco had given her was in her clutch. She pulled it out with shaking hands and dialed the only number. He answered on the first ring. "Amber? The panic room. Mrs. Castellano told them where it is. Marco, they're coming." A string of Italian curses, harsh and furious. "Lock the interior door. There's a gun in the third drawer. Take it." "I don't know how to shoot." "You point and pull the trigger if anyone but me comes through that door. Do you understand?" "Marco, do you understand?" His voice was raw with an emotion she'd never heard from him. Pure fear. "Yes, I'm coming. Don't open that door for anyone. T. Protegero, I will protect you." The line went dead. Amber found the gun with shaking hands, the weight of it foreign and terrifying. She pulled Lily into her lap, both of them huddled in the corner farthest from the door. "It's okay, sweetheart. Your papa is coming. We're safe. The door handle rattled. Then came the sound of someone trying to override the lock. Amber raised the gun with both hands, just as Marco had instructed, and she waited, praying she wouldn't have to use it, praying Marco would get there in time, praying that this wasn't how her story ended. Protecting the children of a man she was beginning to realize meant far more to her than just an employer. The lock clicked. The door began to open. Amber's finger tightened on the trigger. Lily pressed against her chest, both of them holding their breath. "Don't shoot, it's me." Marco burst through the door, blood spattered across his white shirt, his tuxedo jacket gone, his eyes wild until they found her and Lily safe in the corner. The relief that washed over his face was so profound it almost looked like pain. "Dio mio," he breathed, crossing the space in 2 strides. He dropped to his knees in front of them, his hands reaching out to cup Amber's face with surprising gentleness, despite the violence still thrumming through him. "Are you hurt? Did anyone touch you?" "We're fine. We're okay." Amber was shaking so hard she could barely speak, but she forced herself to stay calm for Lily. "What happened? Who were they?" "Ricci's men. Victoria's father decided to make a move during the gala." Marco's jaw was tight with fury. He knew I'd be distracted. He was wrong. "Mrs. Castellano, I saw her on the monitors. She told them where we were." Something dark and dangerous flickered across Marco's face. "I know. She's been dealt with." Amber didn't ask what that meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. Marco gently extracted Lily from Amber's arms, checking his daughter over with trembling hands. "Piccola, sei al sicuro. You're safe now. Papa has you." "Papa." "I was scared," Lily whispered. "But Amber made it okay. She held me and told me you would come." "She was right." Marco's eyes met Amber's over his daughter's head. "I will always come for you. Both of you." The weight of those words settled over Amber like a blanket. This wasn't about employee and employer anymore. Something had shifted between them the moment he'd given her that phone, and now it had crystallized into something neither of them could deny. The ride back to the mansion was silent, except for Lily's soft breathing as she slept against Marco's chest. Amber sat across from them, still wearing the now rumpled blue gown, watching Marco trace protective patterns on his daughter's back. "You saved her life tonight," Marco finally said, his voice rough. "If you hadn't gotten her to the panic room, if you hadn't called me—" "Don't," Amber interrupted softly. "She's safe. That's all that matters." "It's not all that matters." Marco's eyes burned into hers. "You could have left her, run to save yourself. Nobody would have blamed you. But you didn't." "Of course I didn't. I love her. I love both of them." The words came out without thought, raw truth that hung in the air between them. Marco's expression shifted into something Amber couldn't quite read. "That's the problem." "What do you mean?" "You're not supposed to love them. You're supposed to be a professional caregiver who does her job and goes home at the end of the day. But you moved in. You made them your entire world. You risked your life for my daughter without hesitation." He leaned forward, his free hand reaching across to grip hers. "And now you're a target. Everyone in my world knows that you matter. That you're important to this family. That makes you vulnerable. Then fire me." Amber pulled her hand back, hurt blooming in her chest. "Send me away. Protect me by making me irrelevant." "I can't." The admission seemed torn from him. "I can't send you away because they need you. Because they're happy for the first time since their mother died. Because when I come home and hear you singing to them, this house doesn't feel like a tomb anymore. Marco, because I wake up thinking about you." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Because I stand outside the nursery door just to hear your voice. Because seeing you in that dress tonight made me want things I have no right to want. Because when I thought someone might hurt you, I would have burned that entire estate to the ground to get to you." Amber's breath caught. "You can't say things like that." "Why not?" "It's true. Because I'm your employee. Because we come from different worlds. Because you're Marco Valentino and I'm just—" "Don't." His voice turned sharp. "Don't diminish yourself. You're the woman who stood up to me in that first interview, who told me my children needed love more than discipline, who held my daughter during a shooting and didn't fall apart. You're not just anything, Amber Martinez." The car pulled up to the mansion. Marco carefully carried Lily inside while Amber followed, her mind spinning. Inside, Noah was being watched by Maria, who looked relieved to see them all safe. After both children were tucked into bed, Noah having slept through the entire ordeal, Marco found Amber in her quarters. She'd changed into simple pajamas, washed off her makeup, let her curls free. She looked young and vulnerable and utterly beautiful. "We need to talk," he said from the doorway. "I know." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, a breach of propriety they both acknowledged and ignored. "What happened tonight changes things. Ricci knows you're important to me now. Others will figure it out too. You're no longer safe here." Amber's heart plummeted. "So you are firing me?" "No, I'm giving you a choice." Marco moved closer, his presence filling her small sitting room. "You can leave. I'll set you up somewhere safe, somewhere no one in my world can reach you. I'll make sure your grandmother is cared for, that you have money to start over. You'd be free of all of this. Or you stay, but if you stay, you need to understand what that means. It means accepting my protection completely. It means living in my world with all its dangers. It means—" He stopped, struggling with words. "It means accepting that I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe, that you matter to me in ways that go beyond employment." "Marco, I can't be your mistress," Amber said quietly. "I won't be the secret you keep hidden while you maintain your reputation. I'm not asking you to be my mistress." He took her hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses and scars. "I'm asking you to be part of my family, to let me protect you the way I protect Lily and Noah, to let this, whatever this is between us, develop into whatever it's meant to be. Your world tried to kill me tonight. I know, and I will make sure it never happens again. But I need you to choose, Amber. Choose to trust me, or choose to leave while you still can." Amber looked at their joined hands, his powerful and scarred, hers smaller but steady. She thought about Lily and Noah sleeping peacefully down the hall, about the way Marco's eyes softened when he looked at his children, about how safe she felt in this dangerous man's presence. "I choose to stay," she whispered. "But Marco, if we do this, if we let whatever's between us become real, we do it right. No secrets, no hiding. I won't be ashamed of caring about you." I would never ask you to be. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity through her. But this means you're mine to protect now, completely. Do you understand what you're agreeing to? I understand that I'm falling for a man whose world is dangerous, that loving you might be the most reckless thing I've ever done, but I also understand that I can't walk away from your children, and I can't walk away from you. Amber reached up to touch his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. So yes, I understand, and I choose it anyway. Marco's control finally snapped. He pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her curls, while the other wrapped around her waist. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Maybe both. He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was everything Amber had imagined, and nothing she was prepared for. Demanding and gentle, possessive and reverent, filled with weeks of suppressed longing and the adrenaline aftermath of near-death experience. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against hers. I haven't felt this alive in 3 years. Me neither, Amber smiled. Though I could do without the shootings at charity galas. I'll see what I can arrange. His expression sobered. But Amber, I need you to know something. My life, it's violent, it's dangerous. I've done things you can't imagine, made choices that haunt me. If you're going to be part of this family, you'll see sides of me that aren't gentle or kind. The man who tucks in children and the man who runs an empire are the same person. Can you accept all of it? Amber thought about her response carefully. I don't need you to be perfect, Marco. I need you to be honest. I need you to protect your children and give them the father they deserve. And I need you to treat me like an equal partner, not a possession. Can you do that? I can try. I can't promise I won't be possessive. You've seen the world I live in. Possessiveness has kept me alive. But I can promise to respect your strength and never make you less than you are. Then we have a deal. They sealed it with another kiss, slower this time, full of promise rather than desperation. When Marco finally left her quarters, propriety demanding they not be found together, Amber touched her lips and smiled. She'd just agreed to fall in love with a mafia boss. Her grandmother would have been horrified, but for the first time since her mother died, Amber felt like she was exactly where she belonged. What she didn't know was that somewhere in the mansion, fired and furious, Mrs. Castellano was making phone calls that would bring their happiness crashing down. And that the biggest secret Amber had been keeping, one she'd carefully hidden since before she even took this job, was about to be revealed in the worst possible way. 3 weeks after the gala, life at the Valentino mansion had settled into a new rhythm. Marco made time for family dinners. Amber no longer felt like just an employee, but something more, though they'd been careful to keep their growing relationship private. Lily and Noah thrived, their nightmares less frequent, their laughter more common. But secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst possible moments. Amber was in the nursery reading to the twins when her phone, her old phone, not the one Marco had given her, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her blood ran cold as she read it. Does Mr. Valentino know about baby Elijah? About the son you abandoned? Some mother you are, some nanny. Her hands started shaking so badly she nearly dropped the book. Amber? Lily touched her arm, concerned. Are you sick? I'm fine, sweetheart. Let's finish this chapter. But Amber's mind was spinning, panic clawing at her throat. Elijah, her son, her secret. She'd been 17 when she got pregnant by her high school boyfriend, who disappeared the moment he found out. Too young, too poor, too scared. Her grandmother had helped her through the pregnancy. But when Elijah was born premature with health complications requiring expensive care, Amber had made the most agonizing decision of her life. She'd chosen adoption, an open adoption with a wealthy couple who could give Elijah everything she couldn't. Medical care, stability, opportunities. She got to see him twice a year, receive pictures and updates. He was 6 now, healthy and happy, and loved by parents who could provide what she couldn't. But she'd never told Marco. How could she? Hi, I'm your children's nanny. By the way, I gave up my own child. It sounded like a betrayal even to her own ears. That evening, after putting the twins to bed, Amber found Marco in his study. He looked up with a smile that made her heart ache. Hey, I was just going to come find you. I thought we could... He stopped, seeing her expression. What's wrong? I need to tell you something. And you're going to hate me for not telling you sooner. Marco's entire demeanor shifted, the warmth replaced by cold calculation. Sit down. Amber remained standing. If she was going to do this, she'd do it with what dignity she had left. Before I applied to work here, before I even knew who you were, I had a son. His name is Elijah. He's 6 years old. I placed him for adoption when he was born because I couldn't give him the life he deserved. The silence was deafening. Marco's face had gone completely blank. The expression Amber had learned meant he was processing something that enraged him. You have a son. Yes, a son you gave away. The words were like knives. A son I loved enough to give him a better life than I could provide at 17, Amber corrected, her voice shaking. A son who has parents who can afford his medical care and give him opportunities I never had. A son I still see twice a year under the adoption agreement. Marco stood, his movements controlled in a way that was more frightening than rage. And you didn't think this was relevant information when applying to care for my children? Would you have hired me if I'd told you? A teenage mother who gave up her child? Or would you have assumed I was incapable of proper attachment, of truly caring? I would have respected your honesty. His voice was ice. Instead, you've been lying to me for 4 months, living in my home, caring for my children, letting me... He stopped, running a hand through his hair. Were you ever going to tell me? I wanted to. I tried to find the right moment, but there never was one. And then Amber gestured between them. Whatever this is between us, it got real. And I was terrified you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me right now, like I'm something shameful. I'm not looking at you like you're shameful. I'm looking at you like you're someone who kept a massive secret from me while I was falling in love with you. The words hung in the air. Marco seemed shocked he'd said them. Amber felt tears burning behind her eyes. You don't mean that. Don't tell me what I mean. Marco moved closer, and Amber could see the war in his eyes, fury and hurt and something deeper. I have enemies who would kill to have leverage against me. A secret child is exactly the kind of leverage they'd use. And you, the woman I trusted with my children, with my heart. You kept this from me. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't protect you when someone like Mrs. Castellano finds out and uses it against us. Sorry doesn't... He stopped, his eyes narrowing. How did this come up today? Amber pulled out her phone and showed him the text. Marco's expression turned murderous. She knows. Probably found it in your background somehow. And now she's going to use it. He pulled out his own phone, firing off rapid texts. I'm having my security team track this number. But Amber, this is exactly why I needed you to trust me with everything. Every secret is a weapon in my world. I know that now. But Marco, I need you to understand. Giving up Elijah was the hardest thing I've ever done. Loving him meant letting him go. I visit him. I send gifts. I get updates. But I'm not his mother. Sarah and James are his parents. I'm just the woman who gave birth to him. Her voice broke. And every single day I wonder if I made the right choice, if he'll hate me someday for not keeping him, if I'm a coward or a good mother or both. Marco's rigid posture softened slightly. Does he know about you? They've told him about me. That I was very young and loved him very much. That I wanted him to have the best life. He calls me Miss Amber when we visit. The tears were falling now, and Amber didn't try to stop them. He's happy, Marco. He's healthy and loved and happy, that's what matters. And seeing him with his adoptive family, that doesn't kill you? It does. Every single time, but his happiness matters more than my pain. Marco was quiet for a long moment, processing. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer but still edged with hurt. I understand why you made that choice, but I don't understand why you didn't trust me enough to tell me. Because I was afraid you'd see me as broken, as someone who couldn't love your children properly because I didn't keep my own. That's not how love works, Amber. Love isn't... He stopped, shaking his head. I need time to think about this. To figure out what it means. Does it mean I'm fired? No. It means I need to wrap my head around the fact that the woman I love has a child I knew nothing about, that there's a 6-year-old boy out there who's biologically yours, that someone in my world knows this secret and will absolutely use it as leverage. What do? We protect him. Marco's voice turned hard, determined. Whatever else is between us, we make sure Elijah and his adoptive family stay safe. I'll have a security detail assigned to them discreetly, and we find out who sent that text and we neutralize the threat. Marco, you can't just... I can and I will. You're part of my family now, whether you like it or not. That makes Elijah family too, even if he doesn't know it. Nobody threatens my family. The possessive declaration should have frightened Amber. Instead, it made her love him more. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't." Marco pulled her into his arms, and Amber felt the tension drain from both of them. "But no more secrets, okay? If we're doing this, if we're building something real, I need to know everything. The good, the bad, the complicated. No more secrets," Amber promised. But even as she said it, she wondered if there were secrets of Marco's she didn't know yet, secrets that might be far darker than an adopted child. 2 days later, Mrs. Castellano's body was found in the Hudson River, ruled an apparent suicide. Amber never asked if Marco was responsible. Some questions were better left unasked. But when she visited Elijah the following week, with Marco's discreet security team watching from a distance, and saw her son happy and healthy with his real parents, she knew she'd made the right choice, both in letting him go and in trusting Marco with the truth. Sarah and James, Elijah's adoptive parents, noticed something different about Amber that visit. "You seem lighter," Sarah commented, while Elijah played in their backyard. "Like a weight's been lifted." "I told someone about Elijah," Amber admitted. "Someone important, and he didn't judge me, he understood." "That's wonderful, Amber. You deserve someone who sees you for who you really are, strong and loving and brave." Amber watched Elijah laugh as he chased bubbles, and she smiled. "Yeah, I think I found that." On the drive back to the mansion, Amber's phone buzzed with a text from Marco. "How was the visit?" "Good. He's perfect. Thank you for understanding. Always. Come home safe. We are making cookies with the twins. Noah says you promised to teach him to decorate." Home. The word settled over Amber like a warm blanket. The Valentino mansion had become home in a way nowhere else ever had. But their peace was about to be shattered once again, because Mrs. Castellano hadn't been working alone, and the people she'd been feeding information to were far more dangerous than anyone realized. 8 months later, Amber stood in the doorway of the twins' room watching Marco read them a bedtime story in Italian while they snuggled against him. The scene was so domestic, so peaceful, it was hard to remember the violence and chaos that had marked their first months together. After Mrs. Castellano's death, her co-conspirators had been dealt with swiftly. Antonio Ricci had been removed from power, Amber didn't ask for details, and Victoria Ricci had wisely relocated to Europe. The household staff had been replaced with people loyal to Marco, people who treated Amber with respect rather than contempt. But more than the external changes, the internal ones mattered most. Marco had proposed 3 months ago, not with a grand gesture but quietly in the garden, while Lily and Noah played nearby. "Marry me," he'd said simply, "not because I want to possess you, but because I want to build a life with you. Because you've taught me that strength isn't about control, it's about trust." Amber had said yes, of course. They'd married in a small ceremony with just the twins and Amber's grandmother, who'd cried tears of joy despite her initial fears about Marco's world. Now Amber wore Marco's ring and his name, and she'd never been happier. "Amber," Lily called out, noticing her in the doorway. "Come read with us." She joined them on the bed, tucking herself under Marco's arm while Noah climbed into her lap. This complicated, imperfect, beautiful family was everything she'd never known she needed. "I have news," Amber said softly when the story ended, and both twins were drowsy. Marco's arm tightened around her. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. Very good news." She took his hand and placed it on her still, flat stomach. "You're going to be a father again." The look on Marco's face was something she'd treasure forever, shock and joy, and a vulnerability he rarely showed. "Are you sure?" "I took 3 tests, I'm sure." "We're having a baby?" Lily asked, suddenly not drowsy at all. "You're going to have a little brother or sister," Amber confirmed. The twins cheered and Marco pulled Amber closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for loving my children, for giving me a second chance at happiness. For choosing this life even when it was terrifying." "Thank you for seeing me," Amber replied, "for seeing past what I came from and valuing what I could become." That night, after the twins were finally asleep and she and Marco lay tangled together in their bedroom, Amber reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a girl in the Bronx with nothing to her name, to a woman standing in a mansion foyer about to be fired, to a wife and soon-to-be mother building a life she'd never imagined possible. She thought about Elijah, who she'd see next month for his 7th birthday. Sarah and James knew about Marco now, knew that Elijah had a biological half-sibling on the way, and they'd been supportive and kind. Elijah was excited to be a big brother in his own way. She thought about Lily and Noah, who no longer had nightmares, who laughed freely and felt secure in their world. And she thought about Marco, complicated, dangerous, loving Marco, who taught her that sometimes the most unexpected love was the most real. "What are you thinking about?" Marco asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "I'm thinking about that first interview," Amber admitted. "When I told you that your children needed someone who understood that love matters more than perfection, I had no idea I was describing what I needed too. We were both lost," Marco said softly. "You found us, and somehow we found each other. Do you ever regret it? Choosing someone like me?" "Never." He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense in the moonlight. "You're the bravest person I know, Amber Valentino. You walked into a world that should have destroyed you, and you didn't just survive. You transformed it. You transformed me." She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it, gratitude and love and hope for their future. Outside their window, the city lights twinkled, and somewhere in that vast urban sprawl other stories were unfolding. Other people were taking chances, making choices, finding unexpected love. But this story, the story of a girl from the Bronx and a Mafia boss from Long Island, of twins who needed love and a woman brave enough to give it, this story had found its happy ending. Not a perfect ending, because their world would never be completely safe or simple, but a real ending, where love triumphed over fear, where family was built through choice rather than blood alone, and where a woman who'd once been told she didn't belong had found her place. And as Amber drifted to sleep in her husband's arms, her hand resting on the new life growing inside her, she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice that day she'd refused to shrink in Marco Valentino's study. She'd chosen to stay, to fight, to love. And love had chosen her right back. This story has reached its end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys emotional stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.